So I finally decided to convert all of my DVDs and Blu-rays and set up my own home media server. Then I can watch them without having to break out the Blu-ray player and be stuck to the TV. One of the most popular home media servers is Plex, but after spending some time playing with it, I discovered that it's actually pretty limited until I start paying for a subscription.
Failure!
In this video, follow my cheap ass to see how I install the Jellyfin media server, so I can watch my own TV shows and movies without paying for a subscription. In order to do this, let's take a look at the Jellyfin website. Under the download section, you can see the options for the different flavors of Linux, Docker, Windows, Mac OS, etc. I'm going to run this on my Proxmox server, so I will need the Docker version. So after clicking into the Docker tab, we see that you can further dive into the Docker Hub, or the GitHub container registry. All of these contain tons of info on how to do the install. So this may sound too complicated, but don't worry, if I can figure it out, it can't be that bad. I will be setting up a Docker container in a LXC running on my own Proxmox server. To make things really easy, someone has already written a script to automate the install. So you can go to the website Proxmox VE helper scripts at https://ttech.github.io if you want to look at the details. Here you can see that there are ready-made scripts to do things related to Home Assistant, automation, databases, but what we are interested in is media and photo. So let's click into there. As you can see, there are tons of helper scripts for things like Plex, MB, Jellyfin, and more. So let's go ahead and click on Jellyfin Media Server, and we see the simple instruction of one command line. If you don't want to just run any random script off the internet, which is probably a smart idea, you can hop onto the TTech GitHub and then read the helper script first to make sure it doesn't contain anything fishy. So after looking through the code and not noticing anything that's goofy, I'm going to go ahead and launch a shell from my Proxmox server and then type the line to grab the install script and then run it. So basically, you can do a copy and paste, or you can just type it out, which is bash-c, double quotes, dollar, parentheses, wget, dash q, capital L, capital O, dash space https://github.com/tech/proxmox/raw/main/ct/jellyfin.sh end parentheses and double quotes. All right, so after hitting return, the first thing that the script we want to confirm is that you actually want to create a new Jellyfin LXC. And I do, so I'm going to click yes to continue. Then it will ask to see if you want to use the default settings. And you can go ahead and click yes, but for this demo, I want to actually show you what are the options that you can tweak. So I clicked on the word advanced. All right, and we get a tip here that if you use a space bar, you can go ahead and make selections. Okay. Now, we are asked on whether we want to use the default of Ubuntu 22.04, but as of the creation of this video, I know that there is a 24.04 out there, so I'm going to use that latest release instead. Right? You might as well use the latest and greatest. So in the next few screens, I get to choose my own distro, and like I said, I will use 24.04. And then I'm going to be asked about the privileged or unprivileged container. I'm going to go ahead and choose the unprivileged container, as I don't think that this container needs to do anything that requires higher rights. We'll try this for now, and then if I'm wrong, we'll go ahead and change it later. All right, next, I'm going to go ahead and set a root password. I'm going to go ahead and type in password 1, and then verify the passwords. I'm going to go ahead and type in again. Next comes the container ID. What I'm going to do is use the next available number for my LXCs. So it's going to be 308. And then I'm going to be asked to set the host name. I'm going to go ahead and call it Jellyfin-CT to denote that this is a container as opposed to a VM. And then we're going to be asked for the disk size. The default of 8 gig is fine, as I don't plan on using the container space to store my movies. They are going to be on a separate NAS. And then similarly, the default 2 CPU cores is fine, as I'm not going to be doing anything heavy duty on this container. And then lastly, the default of 2 gigs of RAM is also fine. And then we're going to be asked about the bridge for networking. So VMBR0 is fine as well. All right, now for the IP address. By default, it's going to do a DHCP, but I'm going to change it to a static IP. Is it really necessary to use a static IP, you ask? No, but I just like to know what IP the server is going to be assigned. So I'm going to go ahead and use a static IP of 192.168.1.208, and then add the CIDR notation of /24 as the mask. And make note that your network may be different, so use the IP that you want to use for your network, and then the mask as well for your network. Next, for gateway IP, I'm going to set to my network gateway of 192.168.1.1. And then for the APT cacher IP, since I don't have a caching proxy, I'm going to go ahead and leave this blank. Then it's going to ask us if we want to disable IPv6. I'm going to answer no, as I don't see really a point in disabling it. We'll just let it be. And then it's going to ask you about MTU size. And since I don't know what a better one may be, I am going to let the default value prevail. All right, so next is going to ask for the DNS search domain. I am going to leave this as the default. But then for the server IP, I'm going to use my local DNS server of 192.168.1.207. For the MAC address, I don't need to customize it, so I'm just going to leave it as a default. And for VLAN, since I don't have a VLAN set up, I am going to leave it blank. Next, it's going to ask us whether you want to enable SSH access for root. And I'm going to leave this as the default of no. And as for the verbose mode, I'm going to also leave it as default of no, as I will probably not understand all the gibberish that comes across the screen anyways. All right, so finally, it's asking whether we are ready to create the Jellyfin LXC. So take a deep breath, exhale slowly, and then hit yes. All right, so off it goes, and you can see all of the info that we filled in earlier, from the container ID to host name to machine sizes, IP numbers, etc. And then it is going to continue and do a whole bunch of things. And when the install script is finished, you will see the command prompt back. And then you will also see the line that tells you how to access the Jellyfin server. Note that you will need to enter the IP as well as the port number of 8096. All right, so in real time, this took about 2 minutes and 15 seconds on my system, so it's not too bad. So once the install is finished, we can go back to the Proxmox control panel, and you can see the newly created container named Jellyfin-CT as one of my new containers. Okay, now that the new Jellyfin server has been created, let's go ahead and configure the server. From a web browser window, go ahead and type in the URL from earlier, which in my case is 192.168.1.208:8096. And make sure you don't forget the :8096. And we will be shown the welcome page for Jellyfin. And then it's going to ask me for language. And I'm going to go ahead and click English because that's my language of choice. And then click Next. Now I get to create a username. I'm going to go ahead and type in Jellyfin and then create a password and verify. Note that you can create more users for your family and friends, but I'm going to hold off on that until later after this demo. Next, you are asked to set up your media libraries. I'm going to hold off on that for now, as I need to do something on the side to allow the Jellyfin container to see the movie files off my NAS. So let's go ahead and continue the setup with the metadata language and country. Again, go ahead and choose what works for you. And then you get to set up the remote access. And I'm not actually exactly sure what this part does. So I'm going to go ahead and take the defaults for now, and then I can tweak it later when I'm ready to set up access from the outside world. All right, that's pretty much it. We are now ready to log in. So after I type in my credentials, I am greeted with a message that there is nothing here, as we did not add a media library yet. So let's go ahead and get my system ready to add that library. What I need to do is set up my Jellyfin container so that it can access my NAS where my movies and TV shows are stored. So let's go back to the Proxmox shell, where I will go ahead and mount the NAS to my Proxmox server, and then I can share that mount with the Jellyfin container. All right, so first I'm going to go ahead and create a mount point on the Proxmox server. I'm going to go ahead and do makedir/mnt/ds423. You can name it whatever you like. Then I'm going to go ahead and edit the fstab config file to make sure that the mounting of my NAS is persistent upon reboot. So for me, I'm going to use vi/etc/fstab. If you're familiar with Nano or any other editor, feel free to use those. All right, so what I'm going to do is go ahead and go to the bottom and add a line that says //192.168.1.234 /home/share/mnt/ds423 cifs verse equals 3.0 comma credentials equals /root/.smb credentials 0 and 0. So this line basically says that I want to mount my NAS, which is at the .234/homeshare. I want to mount it to the mount point of /mnt/ds423, which I just created earlier. The protocol is going to be CIFS, which is the Windows File Share Protocol. And then for options, I want to use vers equals 3.0, right? So I want to use version 3.0 of the CIFS protocol. And then credentials, I want to go ahead and have it use the one in the file /root/smb credentials. All right, so after that's done, I'm going to go ahead and save the file. I'm going to use the mount-a command to mount devices that are listed in the FS tab. And then once I do that, the system tells me to use this next command to update the mounting table for system D, as it's using the old FS tab information. So I'm going to go ahead and type in systemctl daemon-reload. Okay, so now let's check that mounted folder to make sure that it has the data we expect to be there. So I'm going to go ahead and do ls of /mnt/ds423. And sure enough, I see the folders named movies and TV shows and temp. All right, good. Now that the Proxmox server can see the NAS, let's go ahead and make sure that we can pass it through to the Jellyfin container. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Jellyfin container in the Proxmox controller panel, and then bring up the console window for the container. So within the Jellyfin container, I want to create a mount point. So I'm going to go ahead and call mine /mnt/ds423. Probably should have called it something different so you can tell the difference between the Proxmox server itself and then the container, but oh well, too late. All right, then I'm going to jump back into my Proxmox console window and modify the Jellyfin container configuration in the file etc pvelxc/308.conf. 308 is my container ID. Again, yours may be something different, so use the container ID for your system. And I'm going to go ahead and add a line at the end of the file so that it's going to go ahead and mount what's in the Proxmox server to the Jellyfin container. So I'm going to go ahead and VI this file, etc pvelxc308.conf. And I'm going to add a file that says mp1 :mnt/ds423 comma mp equals /mnt/ds423. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save and exit VI. Now I'm going to jump back into my Jellyfin console window to take a look at that mount point. So I'm going to do an ls of mnt/ds423. And there's still nothing in that folder. Well, that's because we need to actually reboot the system so that the container can pick up the new configuration. So let's go ahead and do reboot. Give it a few seconds to reboot. And then once I can log back in, I'm going to take a look at that mount point again by doing ls/mnt/423. And now I see the movies and TV show folders. So now we have successfully mounted the NAS to our Jellyfin container. Now let's jump back to the web browser window, and then we can continue with the Jellyfin setup. I will go ahead and click on the Libraries menu, and then click on Add Media Library. For the content type, I will select Movies for my first library. And then I'm going to go ahead and select the library language and country region. And I am going to leave all of the other settings as default for now. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on the plus symbol next to the word folders. In the folders box, click in there, and you can type the location of the movies folder, which in my case is under /mnt/ds423, and then movies. Once you have the path in there, go ahead and hit OK. Now you can see that under libraries, we have one library named Movies. You can click on the three dots to edit the icon image. You can rename the library, scan the library, remove the library, etc. Since this is a new library, I will select Scan, which will then present you with different modes. You can scan for new and updated files, search for missing metadata, or replace all metadata. I will select Scan for new and updated files. And you can see that status percentage in the upper right hand corner of this little icon here. The speed to scan the library will probably depend on how many files you have, but it seems like it'll take more than a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and add a second library while I wait. This time I'm going to select the content type of shows for my TV shows. And then for the folder, I will select /mnt/ds423 and then TV shows. Once again, I will choose my language and region and leave everything else as the defaults. Now back at the library screen, I see that we have the movies library, which has completed its scanning, and the newly added shows library. And if I hop back to my dashboard, I can see that there is a running task of scanning my media library, which is just over 50% complete. Okay, now let's test out our new media server system. There is a Jellyfin app on the phones and tablets, so you can go ahead and download those from whatever store your phone uses. And as you can see here, there are also other apps out there that work with Jellyfin, like SwiftFin, StreamyFin, FinAmp, etc. All right, so after downloading Jellyfin app, let's go ahead and launch it and then log in. You can see that I have two libraries, the movies library and then the TV show library. Clicking into the movie library, you can see all the movies that I have in here. And then clicking on a movie like Bridesmaid, you can see the IMDb type info that is available for that movie, including the stars of the movie, other similar movies in my library, etc. And then we can go ahead and play the movie by clicking on the play symbol here. All right, so fun movie, but let's move on. We can now take a look at the TV show library. And here are all of my TV shows. And let's take a look into Band of Brothers. You can see the number of seasons if there's more than one season, and then cast and the crew, etc. like before. And if I click into a season, you'll then see the names of each episode. And again, I can click on the play icon to start playing the show. All right, fantastic show. I highly recommend it. But back to the demo. So you can see that this app is pretty straightforward. On top of the menu, you can select to cast it to a TV if you want to join a group of other users, search for a title, etc. So I'm going to go ahead and do a search and then enter the word Greek. And then in my results, I can see my big fat Greek wedding. And I can start to play that movie. Right, so it's pretty simple. You get the idea. So in this video, we created a Jellyfin media server within a Linux container in my Proxmox server. We were able to connect the movie files, which are on a NAS, to that server. And I also showed that you can use the Jellyfin app to view the videos for free. There are tons of other features that you can explore with a Jellyfin server, like tweaking the hardware acceleration, GPU pass-through, plugins, but I'm going to leave all of that for future videos. So leave a comment below on what you are interested in. For another video that I know you will enjoy, watch this video here. Leave a comment below about your experience with home media servers. Make sure you click on the blue monkey to subscribe if you haven't already done so. Thanks for your time and happy hunting.